technical difficulties like right now. Like sometimes that does happen, but we only have a little bit more to go. Still concerning talking with Saul. So we left off with in the history in the story. We're in chapter 15 of First Samuel, and we're now seeing Saul's another instruction that was given to Saul from Samuel dealing with the Amalekites. And his instruction was kill everything about them. You know, that was the previous segue. Kill everything about the Amalekites, the people, the king, the cattle, the women, the children. Destroy everything that exists about them. And that was much like Saul's other instructions. That was his instructions this time as a, captain, as a king, military leader to do right here. And this is what we can see through the scriptures themselves, what Saul decided to do. Read chapter 15, verse 7 through 9.
1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 7, and Saul smote the Amalekites from Havilah until thou comest to Shur, that is over against Egypt. And he took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive, and utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword. But Saul and the people spared Agag and the best of the sheep, and of the oxen, and of the fatlings, and of the lambs, and all that was good, and would not utterly destroy them, but everything that was vile and refused that they destroyed utterly. Then came the word of the Lord unto Samuel, saying, It repented me that I have set up Saul to be king, for he is turned back from following me, and had not performed my commandments. And it grieved Samuel, and he cried unto the Lord all night.
So we have another instance of what we read earlier in the lesson about Proverbs 12 and 1. It's better to you to follow instruction. Following instruction is going to lead you to prosperity, wisdom, everything that is good that the Most High promised to us. But when you don't follow instruction, which again is leading to forwardness, which we just literally only 5 verses in from what Samuel instructed Saul to do, we see Saul not keeping that instruction that it was given to him. And again, that forwardness to not follow that instruction is what keeps you from what the Most High already established for you and the position you're in. And oftentimes it might lead you to be a lot worse off than what you were given and started off to be. And that's what Saul had came to understanding eventually from Samuel by disobeying the word ultimately that came from the Lord. So that came to Samuel. Samuel was disappointed. Samuel's now about to go and confront Saul again about what he did not do correctly. And Saul pretty much tells him, look, I did everything that the Lord asked me to do, and and I brought Agag, king of the Amalekites, and the best of their flock and oxen and sheep and all that. And then Samuel's like, essentially, I mean, you can read the scriptures yourselves too. Samuel puts it in a very interesting way. He's like, oh, what is all these things that I hear? And just the dialogue interplay is the history is really good. But just summarizing it, Samuel is basically like no, look, you did not hear the instruction of the Lord, because it says already in Deuteronomy chapter 24, thou shalt not add nor take away from the word of the Lord. You were already given the exact instruction of what to do. What you did, Saul, speaking in Samuel, he added more to what the word of the Lord was. And ultimately, for the sake of pleasing the people, really, and we see that, and I mentioned it earlier, Saul had a really strong affinity for pleasing the people of Israel, but ultimately not being in balance with pleasing the will of the Most High. And I want to touch upon that just briefly right now too. But Saul officially loses his anointing by this point in time. He was tested, he was proven, and he was proven that he wasn't the one. Saul was not the one to be worthy as king. And without going into too much of the history of David rising up to the scene, David and Saul could have, he had the choice to leave it as that, but he had a spirit on him, an evil spirit, and part of what that evil spirit influenced him to be like, he became very jealous of the kingly position that he initially was very humble about, almost, again, as the scriptures say, overly bashful about. Because remember, he was at first, when he was told he was going to get anointed, he was hiding, he was scared, he didn't want to show up, he didn't want to be around. But as soon as he actually had that authority and that power, and now of it segueing into in the future lesson for David, he became very jealous of what he once did have and his relationship connection to the Most High. And at the end of the day, more than the relationship than the Most High that he felt, that position of power, because he would have listened to the Most High if he had that heart. That's what he became jealous of, and what he realized that David would soon have. Without going too much into that, but this is some of the things that I want to just bring out again, the imbalance where Saul ultimately had more love for the people of Israel than he had for the Most High. Jeremiah 2:33.
Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 33, why trimmest thou thy way to seek love? Therefore hast thou also taught the wicked ones thy ways.
So that goes hand in hand with just dealing with the order of things. Saul trimmed his ways by, instead of listening to the full instructions of the Most High, he would rather bypass that in preference to pleasing the people, which is, the biggest thing with that was what he did with Amalek and the sheep and oxen that he brought out. It's obviously known that sacrifices that were given to the Most High were offerings to the Most High, but they also fed the people as well too. And it's common. It's also a common thing between kingdoms when you actually bring the king of an enemy, nation and kingdom back to you with your kingdom, as a sense of, it brings a sense of, of pride to that people, seeing that I have the leader of my enemies right here in the clutches of my hands. Look, he, to prod him, and just to see just him in his weak state a state of power. But that's not what the Most High wanted. The Most High didn't want Israel to have, that sense of pride and bringing in captive the king of your enemies. He didn't want the people to be, fed off fat from the animals and the food and the sacrifices of the enemies. Most High said, look, I just want them completely destroyed. But Saul was a people pleaser and not a Most High pleaser. And we see that through all of his actions, which were ultimately transgressions against the will and the word of the Most High. Matthew 22, verse 37 through 40. This is the order that we have to understand, because it's all good that you have love for your people. That's great. We should all have that. We live in a day and age where that's actually very low. But you have to remember, even what Yahushua said for us in these days, this is the order of how it's got to go down. You got it?
Matthew chapter 22, verse 37, Jesus said unto him, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it.
He said, this is the first and great commandment. And the second
is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets.
On those two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Now, we're not sliding that Saul didn't have love for Israel, his people. But unfortunately, where he lacked was he put that love of the people over the Most High. And that was where it was wrong on his end. And that's what we can see in studying. And we still honor, our forefather Saul for what he was. And, a lot of us, even in these day and ages, have done worse than Saul. But when the Most High is that close with us at this point in time, at that point in time, we got to keep everything to the T of what he says. Saul he was a little backwards. He put the love of the people over the love of the Most High. And the last precept I want to get, Sirach 20 and 22 through 23. And I believe this is just when I spoke about earlier about that bashfulness about Saul when he first began. This could be also one of the leading segues into his character flaw that was, I believe, foreshadowed. You have that?
Sirach, Ecclesiasticus chapter 20, verse 22. There is that destroyeth his own soul through bashfulness, and by accepting of persons overthroweth himself. There is that for bashfulness promised to his friend, and maketh him his enemy for nothing.
So that's what we again see. He has Saul was so so subservient and thinking about the people that he didn't consider himself, and thinking that I should just follow the Most High's word to a T. So that was one of the issues, that character flaws that we see with King Saul of the tribe of Benjamin. So with that, we're going to leave Saul. He's still alive at this point in time. Again, there's more to read about him, but the story takes a turn, and where David prophetically becomes king over Israel and anointed in contrast to Saul. So we leave this in one of many breakdowns and understandings of King Saul's life, kingship, and character to a rest. And again, we pray that all of our forefathers, Most High has mercy on them to make it into the kingdom with the rest of us that we have for ourselves, Most High willing. That's it for the lesson tonight. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Good night. Shalom.
Shalom.